Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. It's been a while since I've posted a video, but in general things have been kind of going on a more stable level. But as we move into the start of January 2022, we felt that it would be a good time to do a new video, and today I'm going to be doing this video with my husband. There's a lot that can be learned through talking together about some of the last 7 years. So I've given him a few questions to think about how his perspective on things and how he's found things, which is really important for anyone who's supporting someone with these illnesses or chronic illnesses in general. The beginning of the year is always a significant time for us because it's this week at the start of the year that 7 years ago I had my accident. I was painting on a small stepladder and the stepladder kind of fell away and I fell and hit my head and my back. And as many of you have read and heard, that took me into years of searching for answers and a diagnosis of, well, first a concussion and post-concussion syndrome, and then a spinal CSF leak, and then eventually a diagnosis of arachnoiditis. But it all seems to be, particularly the spinal CSF leak and arachnoiditis, seem to have come from that original fall. But I wanted to do a video with my husband Matt because I felt it would just be a new dynamic in kind of understanding his perspective and reflecting back on the past 7 years and some of the hard parts and the more positive things that we've learned, in the hope that that might help other people in a similar situation to us. So, Matt, what has been one of the hardest parts for you of the past 7 years since I had my accident and got ill?
I think there's been so many along the journey. In the early days, I guess before Becky was diagnosed, we had a lot of unanswered questions, and I think just feeling powerless. You just don't have the answers. You don't know what's doing this to your spouse. It's the fighting for a diagnosis. It's then looking at different treatment options and trying to find a way through. And it can feel like you're just hitting barriers and there's kind of no way forward. So I think seeing Becky suffering and not knowing what to do to help was really, really hard. Lots of battles trying to get diagnosis, lots of trips to the hospital. And I think for me, some of the lowest moments of all along the journey have been where your physical health has impacted on your mental health. And I guess just times where, you know, Becky was so low and it was desperate times and dark times and we couldn't see a way forward, and seeing Becky go through that. And I think for me, I sometimes describe just feeling like I couldn't reach you. It's like this kind of glazed look in your eyes, and it was just really hard watching you go through that.
I think the first time I went through that was at the end of the first year, wasn't it? It was like I kind of held on in, you know, the initial kind of first 3 months and the diagnosis of a spinal CSF leak and an epidural blood patch, and kind of doing better, and think that that was going to keep improving, and maybe I had a bit of concussion still to kind of deal with, but I then relapsed again about 5 months later, and then we had, you know, even more battles in trying to get help. But then after another blood patch, I had a number of weeks of doing a bit better before I had a really awful relapse in around the Christmas of 2015. And it was just, I was burnt out, I was exhausted, I was in, I believe now, an arachnoiditis flare, you know, probably set off again by having another blood patch, and it was really tough, and I had nothing left, and I thought no doctors were going to help or anything, and I was in complete despair and burnout. I stopped sleeping, I was in horrific pain, and I just wanted to escape and not be here. And that was the first time I'd never had any mental health issues until that time, and I think it took you a while even to understand the severity of what was happening, wasn't it? Because I was, acutely suicidal and my mind was out of control. But for you, it was that sense of just,
I think, helplessness and powerlessness,
not being able to reach me.
It's whole time. Becky mentioned exhaustion, and I think as the spouse of someone going on that journey with your spouse, it is exhausting. And as days stretch into weeks, into months, and into years, it's a long journey. And there's going to be times where you come to the end of yourself. There's going to be times where you're just exhausted. And I think for me, not only trying to support Becky through that, but also trying to support our kids through it,
They were 7 and 10 when my accident first happened, so not tiny, but still, need to get to school and need, a lot of help and support.
Yeah, so trying to keep things going at home, trying to hold down my full-time job. I'm heavily involved at church, so there was a lot of plates to keep spinning along the way of just trying to support Becky at the same time. So yeah, I think really exhausting at times.
And it just went on and on and on and on. And every time I thought I was doing better, I would then relapse again. And that was just exhausting for the both of us, really. But was made a bit easier when we did find doctors who supported us long term. I think that brought hope, that there was a kind of a plan to try and help me. So kind of turning it around, what has been one or some of the positives for you of such a difficult journey? Because it's been impossible at times, it's been horrendous at times, it's been so difficult. But there have been positives and things that we've learned and grown along the way.
I think sometimes it doesn't always feel like a positive, but just getting through. There's times where just holding on, just finding a way through. None of us are superheroes, and life is tough, and getting through something like this is tough. And I think just being able to still be standing and find a way through is sometimes enough. We couldn't have done that without the great support we had from family and friends around us. And I think for us, learning to lean on them, learning that it was okay to ask for help, to receive help, even though I guess we were the kind of people who wouldn't generally ask for help.
With people, like we're involved in pastoral ministry, we're people that help others. So it was really humbling, very, very humbling to have to need help, particularly when I was in bed. And then at one point that first year you did your back in and we were both in bed, stuck in bed for a few days, and literally people had to do everything for us. And that's a really humbling thing, but also just a very beautiful thing, just people rallying around and, over the years cooking us food, cleaning our house, looking after our children, children often going and staying with family, when I was in hospital and things. So yeah.
I think one of the positives from that is just that deeper appreciation of other people. And I think as well, a greater depth of relationship between me and Becky that came out of those times as you go through the tough, dark times together, as you face those struggles and as you come through them together, it builds a greater bond between you and a depth of relationship, which is really powerful. There's been loads of good things that have come out of a really, really tough journey.
So what advice would you give to other people in your situation as spouses, kind of partners, or those supporting people like me in this kind of situation, people with both physical and mental health issues and long-term kind of journeys to get diagnosis of rare conditions?
I think I'd say don't give up, even when times are hard, even when it feels like you're not getting anywhere or there's no way forward. We've been encouraged by many stories of people who, it seemed like there was no way forward for them, but then they found a diagnosis or a new treatment option, and
which is guess how it's been for me, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's not solved my issues, but things have improved a lot, haven't it?
Yeah, massively. And I think, from my perspective, we're in the best place we've been probably for the last 7 years with your journey. Things aren't perfect by any stretch, but there's a lot more balance, and things a lot better overall for us as a family. So I'm pleased that we hung on in there, and we've come through into better times.
Which I think is a mixture, isn't it? It's been a mixture of both. I think the arachnoiditis diagnosis was really significant in both the combination of understanding what had been going on and all these extra things that weren't fully explained by the spinal CSF leak, but also then the treatment for that, and understanding that the anti-inflammatories, the steroids, the kind of long-term protocol, and what has always been helpful for me when I could walk, the walking. I continue to walk, try and walk a minimum of 10,000 steps a day. Often it's more than that, over kind of 2-3 walks, and often, especially at the weekend, you'll come with me. You don't have so much time in the week, but understanding all that and understanding my challenges and how to work with that, my need to be on my feet and moving around, my struggles to sit down for long, and kind of having to lie down more, but at the moment in the evening, and accepting that. I think acceptance has been a big part, hasn't it? That's, for many years it was this constant trying to come back to the life we lost, with gaining stuff along the way, but as the years went on. And I think the arachnoiditis diagnosis has helped to see that it's not without a miracle. It's not going away. We've had to learn to live with it. But in learning to live with it, and also knowing how to treat it and understand it, has been empowering, hasn't it? It's knowing then how we can live life and be the best we can be as a couple, as a family, as our positions kind of in church, and the best we can be within the limitations, which I think has been empowering. And knowing that if I do relapse, that won't kind of go on and on and on for months, that the treatment does tend to bring me back from a relapse a lot quicker, and seems to sustain me at a much better place than I used to be. So yeah, we feel very blessed where we are now, and at times never imagined that we could get to this place, even though this place is still full of lots of daily challenges and pain and things we can't do.
Life is far from perfect. Her condition is far from perfect, but we're certainly in much calmer waters than at many times over the last 7 years. So we're really, really thankful for that, and we try and maintain that attitude of thankfulness and gratefulness for everything that Becky can do and everything that we can do as a family. And we're so thankful for the better place that she's in, even though there's still challenges, there's still struggles in the midst of that. So I'd say, don't give up, keep hopeful, and keep remembering that there is a way forward, even if it doesn't feel like that.
I think for me, something I've really appreciated with Matt is his willingness to listen and to learn, even when he wasn't in my shoes. That graciousness, that kind of unconditional support, when it was hard to reach me, when things were so bad, just him being there, just him being there was valuable. Just him, when you're in, it's very scary when you're very, very ill, and both physically and mentally very scary. You're in turmoil, and it's hard to get through, each minute, let alone each hour or each day. And just knowing he was there was so important to me. So I think my advice for people who are supporting someone in a situation like mine that is struggling both physically and kind of mentally is to be available, is to listen, without judgment, to be supportive on that journey, even when you don't understand, because you're not in their body. I think these things can make or break relationships, and I know of people it's been both, but for us it's actually been a strengthening thing, not a destructive thing. But I want to say thank you to Matt for joining me today for this video. We hope that it's helpful to couples and families that are trying to navigate through this. But as Matt said, you know, just a moment ago, the main thing we want to say is don't give up. There's an element to which you don't have any choice. You know, if people say, I don't know how you've done it, you know, you're like, you don't have any choice, you've got to go through it. But the only choice that I've had is been to escape this, you know, and at times my mental health has gone so dark, you know, that I have considered the only way of escaping in suicide. But you know, now I look back on that and just think, oh, that would have been devastating for my family and such a waste, you know. And I've come to a place where not only life is manageable, but it's a life worth living, and a life that's full of love and full of joy and full of purpose, you know, despite daily challenges and also the not knowing what the future will bring. But I think that's another thing that's changed, hasn't it? Like not thinking too much and planning too much for the future, but learning to you know, embrace each day and do what we can do and try not to get too caught up in the things that we can't.